Welcome back to our tour of the cell, and today we're going to look at just two of the organelles, and these are, I grouped these ones together because they're both kind of biological sacs. The first is the lysosomes, and I think of them as the stomach of the cell because they digest things. So lysosomes are basically small sacs that contain digestive enzymes, and if we look in the upper left here, the membrane, it has a plasma membrane. If you look, it's a lipid bilayer. It's a single layer, so unlike we looked at the chloroplast and the mitochondria last time, this one only has a single layer, but inside are these enzymes, and they're hydrolytic. It means they're going to be digestive. They're going to break things down. So they digest food, bacteria that they might engulf, and worn out organelles. So now if we look in the lower right here, we can see here's our lysosome in the orange, and it will digest foreign cells or particles that the cell may ingest. If there are damaged organelles, it will digest them and recycle them. And also if there's molecules to be destroyed, the lysosome will fuse with that and the enzymes will break them down. There's also something called apoptosis, or programmed cell death. And I don't have a picture of this here, but what happens is at some point the cell may receive a signal that it's time to die. And when that happens, the lysosomes will literally break open from the inside and they'll dissolve that cell from the inside out. So we think of the lysosome kind of as the stomach, the digestive center of the cell. The second sac that we're going to look at is the vacuole. And all cells have vacuoles. Animal cells tend to have many smaller ones, but it's plants that we're going to focus on because they've got a large central vacuole. And a vacuole is a membrane-bound sac that holds water, and within that water there can be dissolved foods, enzymes, and other materials, sometimes waste materials for disposal that we'll talk about. And the vacuole is very simple in structure. It has a membrane called the tonoplast, and that's about it, and it holds water. Now, plants, as we mentioned before, have a large central vacuole, and that's very important because it helps maintain something called turgor pressure. And if we look at the two plants down in the lower right here, we can see if we forget to water a plant and it dries out, look what happens to the central vacuole. It shrinks. And that causes the cell walls to kind of collapse on themselves. There's no internal pressure, so the plant wilts and becomes droopy. If we look at the plant on the left here, we can see, hey, there's a large central vacuole. It's full of water. It's pushing out against the cell walls, and that's what we call turgid. And that plant is upright and healthy. So the next two diagrams are just going to look at turgor pressure and how it is. So we can see, again, we've got the plant on the left looks healthy and upright. The plant on the right looks droopy and wilted. And the reason for that is the plant on the left, we can see there's a large central vacuole. It looks like a water balloon in the middle. And when it's full, it causes the cytoplasm in the cell to push out against the cell wall and makes it very stiff and upright. Now the cell on the right, we can see the central vacuole is empty, and it's lost a lot of water, and that causes the plasma membrane to pull away from the cell walls. There's no internal pressure, and those cells will kind of collapse on themselves and cause the plant to wilt. And so again, the same idea again, but here, when that plant is in a situation where there's plenty of water and water can flow into the central vacuole, as shown on the left, the central vacuole swells, it pushes against the cell wall, and we get a turgid cell. So these are the terms that you need to recognize when we talk about these types of cells. So the first is a turgid cell, and that's when we've got a large central vacuole and there's lots of internal pressure. The second is over on the right. Now here's a plant that is in very dry conditions. It's losing water from the central vacuole and it loses its shape. There's no internal pressure. The cell walls can kind of buckle, and this is called a flaccid cell. So this is when the cell is going to wilt, shrink, and lose its shape. So turgid and flaccid cells are what you kind of have to remember from vacuoles. So we've just finished talking about kind of the sac-shaped structures of the organelles, the lysosomes, and the vacuoles. So until next time, we'll talk to you then.